My name is Antonio Adessi, Antonioadessi.
My name is Alan Jackson. I've been in the field of construction for way too long.
I have a master's degree in architecture. I graduated in architectural technologies and architectural design at the University of Florence, and that was back in 2000. So it's been 24 years that I have my master's degree. I started with an interior design practice back in 1997, and then I converted that into a full architectural service office.
You start from the bottom, and well, people like me do, and probably since I was 17 doing that. 17, I was climbing up 250-foot radio antennas and tightening the guy wires that were holding them up with no safety equipment at that time. But I'm a project manager, and I'm currently a project engineer for the Corps of Engineers at Tyndall Air Base.
I always did product design and interior design since I was 25, so that was just a component of what I was doing. Before I did that, I did 3 years in mechanical engineering because I was very interested into, my passion is cars, so I was interested in designing cars and then product design. And from there, I got the architectural bug, and I kind of started seeing a different pathway in my life, a different career.
Well, there's several facets of it. The obvious one is like more of an artistic type of, pleasing to the eye, and it's like a work of art, and sometimes defying physical laws, or apparently looking like they're, defying gravity or something. But there's so many different styles of construction that are just beautiful in their different ways, right? But I think the true beauty is the function as a constructor and an engineer type, is when you have a building that functions well. It's pleasing to the eye, but it could be pleasing to the eye and it could not work,
Well, airports, train stations, hospitals are places of great emotions. I wanted to start understanding more about the human psyche and how it works, even though I have to admit I've never been too interested into the individual psychology versus the application of anthropology or sociology, but I could see a lot of the impact that architecture has on humans and the mutual interaction between humans living in the space and how the space at the same time forms the habits of a human.
The psychology of it, I think, makes man amazed at what is created from inside of a person. As far as, you can talk about combinations of colors or combinations of materials. What's beautiful for one person isn't for another. Some people like a traditional peaked house, and then others would like, massive concrete walls and flat structures. And if you go to Tyndall Air Base, you'll see all the roofs have this, it's almost the same type of curve to them. All the colors are chosen by the base architect.
I thought, well, I really want to design spaces for humans. I started changing kind of my interest in so many different ways, from the building as a building system to, so to speak, the ecology. The building seen as a life support system. So I know what I try to achieve. And in general, I've always been surprised, because then I think, the way to measure if you achieve what you were trying to set yourself for It's to see how the space is used over time, and did you get what you were thinking, or in general, I always feel that I'm very lucky in my career. I always think that I achieved more than what I expected, and I don't mean it by I set my level low, because I mean, if you can set your level low, then you're always happy. You never trigger anything of a failure. But back in the 1870s, they wrote something about Einfühlung, that in German means the introduction of sentiment. Their idea was that the German design should be different from any other design, and one of the requirements was that the machine should not just perform, should express a sense of introduction of sentiment to it. And I mean, sometimes I think, well, it's kind of scary, the German sentiment, and then, you know, knowing the evolution of that into the neo-fascist. But other than that, though, the idea, though, that an object, it's not just itself. An object can be an avatar, if we translate that into modern terms. And that to me, it's something that has always been at the center of my thinking. The fact that an object is a simulacra, it has symbols embedded into it and can express feelings, can express sadness, happiness, openness, can be closed off. So in general, I think of the buildings as a sponge, where there are different degrees of permeability to the space. So the human fruition of that space, to me, needs to be readable without looking at signage, where you know what is appropriate. And so that is usually how I try to design spaces that it's obvious, you know, where you need to be quiet, where you can be loud, where you're welcome, where you should be on your tippy toes because maybe you should be wondering, should I be here? That to me, it's a readability of space, but it's also communication, because at the end of the day, I think what we do in design, in music, in fine arts, in sculpting, in painting, in architecture, we try to communicate. And the advantage that I see in architecture in it is that it lasts. You know, it's a medium that supports a communication that vibrates for centuries and millennia to come. And so the part that interested me looking into psychology, but especially sociology and anthropology, is the fact that, you know, it's a book, but at that point it's there. It can be deciphered by a civilization that doesn't even know the language that I was speaking. You know, we're looking at Etruscan, we're looking at the Aztec, Mayans, we don't know so many things. And Mesopotamians, I mean, that is so much of their knowledge, their culture that is being lost. But the architecture still expresses, you know, what we see in the architecture. We can still see, I think, the emotional and cultural stance of a civilization even after that civilization is gone. I tend to favor the complexity of society versus the individual needs on that. You know, everybody's got their own calling. I guess if I ever design a hospital for terminally ill people and it's only one bedrooms for one person, I will do that. But in general, I do assembly spaces where I have 50 people or more. So my attention tends to gravitate to that. And even when I was doing residential design, you know, most of the time, to me, one of my elements was always to think about the houses as an expression of the family that lives within.
Some people like different things, so I like my house with all the shades closed, and it's like a cave. That's how I keep it. But your mother, on the other hand, when the sun comes up, wants to open up all the shutters and, you know, see the light. I think light affects space a lot. I think that open areas, I mean, it's like different ages do different things, and the houses all in this area were very much, you'd go in and the kitchen was one little room with walls up to the ceiling, and then you'd have a dining room maybe, and then a living room, all separate rooms. And then what they've done after the hurricane is they plug the insurance money, and then they pretty much open up the walls and put, let's say, a beam in, uh, laminate beam, and then they don't have to have all those walls. So it actually, you see a little tiny house like across the street, and when you go in, it just seems so huge. And it has this big window that overlooks the lake, which makes it even look bigger. So it's not just the space that you use, it's also the illusion of space. You know, you can have a tiny room and then put a mirror on one wall and it looks a lot bigger, you know. But those things are psychological things that would, not necessarily the actual space, but the illusion or the appearance of more space and openness. I think people are more comfortable with it. Well, people of my size, of course, are a lot more comfortable with space. That's why I have an F-250.
Colors, to me, are a very important thing that I play with. The quality of light as well. Because I've always been a very form-oriented kind of designer, even as drawings as a child. Color to me was not that important. Form, the outline, the shapes were more important in my head than color. At that point, I followed his advice. I started taking pictures. He told me, if you really want to understand light, you need to start taking pictures. And then he told me, you know, all you've seen is light. And that kind of changed my mindset from being so form based to really start thinking that human perception is really based on light. Colors are a reflection of a different frequency in light. And so I really started concentrating a lot of what I was doing on light and how light creates the shape. And then eventually I started paying a lot more attention in color. Emotionally, you know, there is the excitement, there is the sense of the building, it's opening up to you, so there is the sense of welcome. You go through the security, so you know that you gotta be quiet, you gotta be in line, etc., etc. But then you get back inside the atrium, and now all of a sudden it's all open, it's flooded with light from a north, clear story. So there is this sense of, you're breathing, you're jumping, etc. And I usually try to put myself in what I foresee being the possible stakeholders. So a thing that I do very often, especially if I design schools, I design a lot of public buildings. So in schools, very often I put myself in my drawings at the height of the child. So I actually sketch different stories depending. Am I the teacher where my eyesight is set at 4'6", 5 foot, and make the joke that in my book, 1 + 1 needs to make at least 3. And I think sometimes, we set ourselves to achieve something, and hopefully most of the time we get surprised by the human interaction of that space, and we hopefully achieve more than what we just anticipated. 20 years ago, I did a park design where I had a sport medicine doctor working with us, because we wanted to look into how the park actually, we wanted to make sure when different people of different age, from kids to adults to elder people, could use the park when they needed to be resting, So we actually did several pathways, and the doctor was actually putting the heart rate so that we can see how many calories, etc., the need for hydration, etc. But to me, it was also an opportunity, because at that point, we had an artist also working with us, and so we tried to look at what is that can happen at that time. So if I am 70 years old and I got to this point, I'm out of breath, how can I entertain, how can I educate that person, what are the needs, etc., the physical needs, but also from an emotional point, what am I looking for? So stress, it happens all the time, and the worst thing, I'm a stress eater. So the two things, yes, how do you get in architecture and you gain 70 pounds? Yes, that's definitely.
Yeah, that part of it is not as exciting, I guess, as the creative construction part of it, and even the engineering part of it, knowing how to do things.
It's not a common profession. I was never a morning person. I cannot afford not to wake up early. So on that side, that changed drastically my habit. I never thought that I was gonna be, up and running early in the morning, and I actually really love it. I was always a night owl. Because to me, especially my first office, after 7 o'clock, finally, 7:30, everybody was out of the office. Till 2 o'clock at night, I could work without the phone ringing or emails, etc.
You know, it's like business, it's paperwork, and you can lose your shirt if you're not careful, because there are people out there that not only are wanting to trick you, but they're wanting to give you less than they promise. And that's what you got to hold people accountable to, the business part of it. As far as your cash flow, obviously you can mismanage a job and not get it done on time or within your budget. You can dream too high and use the most expensive finishes on the house and go out of your budget. I've seen plenty of people do that.
Especially when I first opened my office, I used to get in a motorcycle and ride to be able to think, because isolated from everything in my helmet, sometimes just singing in my helmet, riding up on a mountain road, I could think. I could find enough quiet away from the stress. Seriously, I destroyed my first 3 cell phones, meaning that I just left them there, never charged, never used, because I hate the idea that in architecture you need to be reachable at all times. It's not something that I like, because the continuous pressure, ends up being a stress that I don't think it's very creative. But eventually you start coping with it. It took me about 15 years to get over the cell phone in the pocket.
I don't know if it's that stressful, because it's always easy to spend someone else's money in my jobs. I work for the government. So, it's not that we don't look out for the government funds, but it's just easy to just do logical choices and making concessions and also looking forward and seeing, hey, we better put some more funds in this, because we're going to run out if this happens. We prepare for the worst a lot of times.
Now, the stress in the profession is real, but one way that I try to use psychology is with experience over the years, I really interview my clients. I try to understand their psychology, what moves them, where is they're coming from, their stress, and what are their stressors.
You can have a good team, or you can have every man for himself team. I was recently on one of those. And pretty much, I've been most of the groups I've been on. It's like a band of brothers, and we rely on each other, and we're. It's kind of. Most of these guys are veterans and have been in the service and stuff, and have learned to work as a team.
Right now, I'm doing a job where I'm designing an ice cream shop for somebody that. He hired already an architect and an interior designer, and he was not happy with them after 7 months. Let both of them go. And I usually don't really like to get in this kind of jobs, because the person is already under heavy stress, and the contractor is a former student. So to help him out, I said, well, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I had a 3-hour meeting with a client before I decided to say, okay, I'm gonna do this job, and because I really wanted to understand, okay, what's going on. With them, because he had already 2 professionals working with him, and I wanted to understand where the problem is. Was the professional side, or is he the problem? Still, my early assessment was he's the problem, and as I'm going through that relationship right now with that client, yes, I know that I was correct. He cannot make decisions. He gets easily distracted. You cannot keep him on track. So I try to limit the opportunities for him to get distracted, even though Because I know, I mean, he lives a very fast-paced life. He's got 5 different shops, so I'm sure he has to split his attention at all times. And I keep reminding him, no, we need to change this cloud into a linear path. Right now, you have so many things hopping left and right. You need to be less scattered in your thinking. We need to get to a linear approach so that we can make sequential and consequential decisions, and we can line them up so that we can go through a rational process. And you make up your mind, you get to a conclusion, and we move on to the next step.
Group. So that's probably the camaraderie is one of the better parts of construction, and I delegate quite a bit, and I don't know everything. Like I'm a carpenter really, but anything on electrical, and even if you look at EM 385 and OSHA stuff, is you don't try to answer electrical questions if you're not an electrician. You go to a qualified electrician for him to do that. Well, I rely on my team a lot. I have a lot of subject matter experts that if I go in and I tell my contractor to do this, then I take all the liability for telling them to do that. However, if they don't want to do something and I know that they ought to be doing it according to the specification, I'm not going to pretend I'm the expert. I'm going to gather other experts, and I'm going to bring them, and they're going to have a written opinion, and they're going to say, according to this standard and spec, you need to do this, And then if I have to, I bring the contracting officer in, and they have to do it. It's obligated by law.
And in that moment, I felt like a call. Now we need to move. It's the light sensor, unfortunately, is behind those boards. So, but okay, yep, you got it.
This one be in it?
Yep. Did my fly on?
It's from here up. They're gonna see your shirt.
That's all right.
That's a tough question.
My name is Alan Jackson. I have been in the field of construction for...
Wait, hold on. I need to repeat that. I need to turn this off.
Suffocate the fish.
For a long time.
So I go up.
Yeah, name again. What's the main feeling you want to portray in your designs?
Peace and quiet.
That part of us that's creative, smart and intelligent, and makes cool things.